Actually, I'm very glad to follow the previous speaker because, first of all, I'll declare myself, I am a nationalist, I'm not an internationalist. I've already lost 4 countries that I call home. The countries I speak of are Kenya, what was Tanganyika, what was Rhodesia, and what is still currently called the Republic of South Africa. They've all been home to me. We've lost them. They're gone. Victims of internationalism, the plundering of their mineral resources, and so it goes. Probably some of the things I'm going to say to you today are going to offend you. My speech today, I think, on your program is entitled Dopes Down Under. And it's pretty apt. And of course there are exceptions to any general rule. But if you want to save this nation of yours, you're going to have to become nationalists. You're going to have to get over the fence. You're going to have to do something. But my principal address today is, how have they managed to get away with it? How can you steal a nation? How can you rob it of its resources? And of course, the way you do it is to dumb down the people, dumb down the school system, neutralise the people, and in fact you can buy a fiction called Opium, and it explains in fiction very well the plan to addict the American armed services, which of course included our Australians in Vietnam, to addict them to heroin. And the triads were already put in place in the West Coast United States, principally in San Francisco, so that they could supply the demand for heroin that they created during the Vietnam War with our troops. And from there, it spread right through the white Western world. It has been used to subvert and destroy nationalism in many countries. And I'm speaking now as an Australian nationalist, so I'm principally concerned with the problem here in Australia. We might not be able to do much about what occurs in the United States and other countries, but we should certainly be able to do something about what's occurring in this nation. And today, not much is being done. Basically speaking, you can say the Liberal National Coalition, whatever you want to call them, catastrophe, whatever, have had a principled stand against drugs. They're saying basically illicit drugs are wrong, that it is an offence, and they've done everything except try to fix the problem. It doesn't fix a problem if you take a drug-addicted person out of a vehicle or wherever they've been detected using their drugs. Could be a smash, and a lot of road crashes are due to drug addiction. Not much point taking them out of that situation, putting them in court, fining them money they haven't got, you're compelling them to commit more theft, robbery, prostitution, whatever the heck they do to get their money to buy the drug, to pay the fine. When they can't pay the fine, if the parents haven't paid or the extended family or somebody else, that person's then going to go to the University of Crime, which is known as jail or the slammer or whatever you want to call it. And if they weren't bad when they went in, they're probably going to be worse when they come out. The net end result is, though, you've got a person who in their own way is a victim, who might be very unfortunately genetically predisposed towards addiction to something. Probably most of us are, and if we're unlucky enough to run into that substance, get introduced to it in some way, whether it's alcoholism through legal liquor, or whether it's amphetamines initially prescribed, as happened with a member of my family, prescribed by a doctor to a young girl without the parents' knowledge. And the person can become addicted, and then they're looking for illicit drugs. So it's a massive problem, and the aspect I'd like to cover today is why has this been allowed to occur? And I believe, strangely enough, it fits very neatly with the previous speaker, because you can't just take over a nation. This nation should be, of all nations on God's earth, this nation should be independent. We still feed 120 million people, yet we've only got round figured about 20 million people here. They ain't going to starve us into submission, are they? How can they? We'd all die overweight, and a lot of us are, because this is now the fattest nation on earth. So they can't use that threat. There's not one European country, I think, that really feeds itself. Yet we feed, probably 10 people for every Australian in existence. We actually, as a nation, export enough food to feed them. So, again, they use the same principle as they used to undermine the fundamentals in American society. They infiltrate the media. They destroy the ethic of nationalism, and they destroy the armed services. And in fact, you know, as you probably know, we've got 6 bubble blowers that we call submarines. 4 of them are currently moored, insufficient crews. Our recruitment for all our armed services in this country are well behind schedule. Despite the fact they're well paid, they get danger money when they go to do what they elect to do, they join the armed services. Most of my friends bailed out of the Pommy and African things because we weren't fighting anyone. What's the point of joining an army for peacetime operation? If you want a peace force, send the police in. You know, we've got too many of those who are policing the roads and not doing the crime job. But if you don't send your combat troops in as peacekeepers, it's a fundamental mistake. But I'll diversify. So I want to explain to you, first of all, why this country is so important to the rest of the world. It's not just a source of food. They're not just robbing us of our mineral resources. In actuality, this country is a prime centre of money laundering. And I'm probably well qualified to speak on this. I'm not a highly educated man, but I did spend many years in casino operations. I helped set up the surveillance on the Townsville casino. I helped train the surveillance operators there. I know all the dirty tricks in casinos, and of course, consequently, I understand money laundering. The last time I bothered to check, 5 of the current Australian casino managers, I think we're 14 casinos at the moment, give or take one, it might be 15 now. They actually trained at West Point, where I was originally imported to help train the first set of dealers. I arrived actually December the 1st, 1972, the day Gough Whitlam took power in this country. And I helped train all the original dealers and inspectors at West Point Casino. I then ran the only legal baccarat game in Australia at West Point Casino, and for its first years from the inception. And I was that disgusted after a term of government by Whitlam and then Malcolm Fraser that I quit, and I went back to Africa. I preferred to have gone back into the forces and perish over there than this slow strangulation of international socialism that I see occurring here. And unfortunately, when I got back, I used to deal at general level in South Africa. I found that the South Africans had been complicit with the betrayal of the Rhodesians. But anyone who will betray his best friend is going straight down the same gurgler. And it's basically the domino theory still applied. They now have taken Africa and its resources. The Chinese are in South Africa now. They built the Tanzan Railroad. I used to operate military intelligence. So I'm actually from Kenya and then Tanganyika. And I was doing work for the southern countries, Rhodesia and South Africa, before I'd even been there. And anyway, we've lost there, and I promise you this nation is the next target. Right? How are they getting away with it? It's a one-word answer: drugs. Be they licit or illicit, whether they're prescribed medically legally or supplied illegally. The fact is, this nation has a mammoth problem, and I'm round figuring everything. And since Major Brian Waters is no longer in the position, and I no longer have his phone numbers, I don't have current up-to-date news, but Waters was our delegate to the United Nations Anti-Narcotics, whatever it's called, and prior to that was a Salvation Army Major who was one of the leaders of probably the most effective single organisation in this country on the sharp end of drugs. They're out there in the street, decent, dedicated people doing a magnificent job. And I used to get my figures from Brian Waters, and you know, I was privileged to get that, and I've always used them, but my information's old now. My source of reference is normally the Australian newspaper. If they're wrong, I'm wrong. But generally, when they give figures, they're conservative. Sometimes you've got to read between the lines. I subscribe to Time